He said it over the sound of the orbital sander. I felt the vibration of his words more than I heard them, a low hum in the floorboards of the garage. I clicked the sander off. The sudden silence was heavy, thick with the smell of sawdust and my son's impatience. "Stop tinkering with that old boat, Dad," he said again, louder this time. "It's an embarrassment." I set the sander down on the workbench. Carefully, I made sure the cord wasn't tangled. I placed it next to the can of wood stain I'd bought that morning. My hands did not shake. That was the first thing I noticed. They were steady, covered in a fine film of cedar dust, but steady. An embarrassment. The word hung in the air between us. It wasn't the first time he'd used a word like that. There was outdated for my method of grilling ribs. There was sentimental for keeping my father's watch, the one that no longer kept time. There was stubborn for my refusal to get one of those phones that knew more about me than I did. But embarrassment was new. It had a different weight. It landed not like a criticism, but like a verdict. I looked at him. Mark, my son. He stood in the doorway of my garage, silhouetted against the bright green of the lawn he paid a service to cut. He wore a polo shirt with a tiny logo over the heart. His arms were crossed. He had the look he always had when he came over, a look of strained patience, as if he were visiting a difficult client and not his own father. I didn't say a word. I just looked at the boat. It wasn't much, not yet. It was a skeleton of cedar planks and marine-grade plywood, resting on sawhorses. A 16-foot skiff. I'd bought the plans from a man in Maine who still drew them by hand. For 2 years, I had worked on it. In the evenings, after my wife, Eleanor, had passed. On weekends, when the house felt too quiet and the television offered nothing but noise. It was my project, my corner of the world. It was the one thing that was entirely mine. Seriously, he continued, stepping into the garage and waving a hand at the cloud of dust motes dancing in the afternoon light. "What are you even going to do with it? You're 72. You can't be hauling this thing to the lake by yourself. It's a hazard." I ran my hand along the gunnel. The wood was smooth, warm from the friction of a sander. It felt alive. "We've been talking," he said, though we was always him and his wife, Carol. A united front of practicality. Carol found a great place. It's more of a community. They handle the maintenance, the meals. You wouldn't have to worry about all this. He gestured vaguely at my life. My workbench, my tools, my home of 40 years. All this I picked up a clean rag. I wiped the dust from my hands. I thought of Eleanor. She had loved the smell of sawdust. She used to say it smelled like something new being born. She would bring me a glass of iced tea and watch me work, her presence a quiet comfort in the corner of the garage. She never called my projects an embarrassment. "Did you hear me, Dad?" "I heard you," I said. My voice was raspy. I cleared my throat. "I heard you good. So just think about it, and maybe give this a rest." He pointed at the boat again, a final jab. "It's taking up all the space. We can't even park the car in here when we visit." He never parked in the garage. He always left his pristine SUV in the driveway, as if pulling it inside would contaminate it with the scent of motor oil and honest work. He left. I didn't watch him go. I heard the polite, electronic chirp of his car locking. I heard the engine turn over, too quiet, too refined. I stood there in the silence of my garage for a long time. The word echoed. Embarrassment. I looked at my tools. The chisels my own father had given me, their wooden handles dark with the oil of his hands and mine. The heavy drill press I'd saved for a year to buy. The table saw that it cut the wood for Mark's crib. These things were not an embarrassment. They were a history. They were my hands, my time, my life. And the boat. It was more than a boat. It was a promise I had made to myself without even knowing it. A promise of a place where my own thoughts were the loudest thing in the room. A place of quiet water and open sky. That night, I did not sleep in my bed. I brought a blanket and a pillow out to the garage. I lay on the old cot I kept for naps. The air smelled of cedar and varnish. It smelled of purpose. I looked at the curved lines of the hull, the strong ribs of the frame. It was not a hazard. It was an escape. The decision came not as a storm, but as a quiet dawn. It wasn't anger. Anger was a fire that burned out. This was different. It was cold. It was clear. It was the calm of a deep lake on a windless morning. He thought the boat was an embarrassment. I would show him what it was. The next morning, I did not make my usual pot of coffee. I made a single cup, using the old percolator Eleanor had loved. I sat at the kitchen table and looked out at the bird feeder. The finches and sparrows were squabbling, a flurry of life. I took out a fresh legal pad and a pen. At the top of the page, I wrote a single word, alibi. It felt right. It was a reason, a justification. It was my excuse for where I was going. I started a list. It was a simple list at first. 1. Finish the boat. 2. Find a lawyer. 3. Sell the house. I looked at the list. It seemed impossible, so I broke it down. Under finish the boat, I wrote smaller steps. Varnish the hull. Install the seats. Mount the outboard motor. Under find a lawyer, I wrote a name, David Miller. He was the son of my old friend from the VFW Post, a man who understood that not all value could be measured in dollars. Under sell the house, I simply wrote, call a realtor. The list made it real. It wasn't a dream or a fit of pique. It was a plan, a series of small, manageable actions. I spent the morning on the boat. I didn't use the power sander. I sanded the final stretches of the hull by hand, with fine grit paper. The work was slow, methodical. With each long, smooth stroke, I felt a layer of something being stripped away from me. A layer of expectation, of quiet duty, of being the convenient, forgotten father. My hands, which had been steady the day before, now felt strong. The muscles in my forearms burned with a clean, honest ache. This was not the ache of old age. It was the ache of effort, of creation. Around noon, I went inside and made the first call. Miller and Associates, a crisp voice answered. "I'd like to speak with David Miller," I said. "My name is Arthur Jensen." There was a pause. "Mr. Jensen, of course. My father speaks of you often." One moment, David's voice was warmer than his receptionist's. "Art, good to hear from you. How are you doing? How's that boat coming along?" His father, Frank, must have told him. Frank was one of the few who had seen the boat not as a folly, but as a piece of craftsmanship. He'd come over a few months back, run his hand over the wood just as I did, and nodded. "She's got good lines, Art. Good lines. It's coming along, David," I said. "That's partly why I'm calling. I need some advice. On wills." "And property, of course," he said, his tone shifting from friendly to professional. "When would be a good time to meet? Is this afternoon too soon?" I asked. There was another slight pause. I could picture him looking at his calendar, a day full of important appointments. "For you, Art? I'll make time. How about 3 o'clock? I'll be there," I said, and hung up. One item on the list addressed. I drew a neat line through it. Next, I went to my desk. It was an old roll top, cluttered with 40 years of life. Bills, receipts, old photographs, Eleanor's address book. In a bottom drawer, beneath a stack of old tax returns, was a thick manila envelope. It was labeled household documents. Inside were the deed to the house, the title to the car, and the documents for our joint bank accounts. And there, on top, was the power of attorney I had signed 5 years ago, making Mark my legal agent in case I became incapacitated. He had been so practical about it. "It just makes sense, Dad." To simplify things, I looked at his signature next to mine. It seemed so confident, so sure of itself. I placed the document on the top of the pile I would take to David Miller's office. At 2:30, I put on a clean shirt. I combed my hair. I looked at myself in the hallway mirror. The face looking back was tired. The lines around my eyes were deep, but the eyes themselves were clear. They looked like my own for the first time in a long time. David's office was in a new building downtown, all glass and steel. It smelled of leather and cleaning solution. It was a world away from my garage. He met me in the lobby himself, shaking my hand firmly. "Art, come on back." In his office, he poured 2 glasses of water. He didn't rush me. He sat behind his large, clean desk and waited. "I want to make some changes," I started, my voice sounding loud in the quiet room. To everything, I laid the documents on his desk. I told him what Mark had said. I didn't tell him with anger or self-pity. I told it like a fact, like a piece of evidence. He called my boat an embarrassment. David listened. He leaned forward, his hands clasped on the desk. He didn't interrupt. He had his father's eyes, I realized. They were eyes that knew how to listen. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he picked up the power of attorney. This is the first thing we can address, he said. A revocation is simple to file. It will be effective immediately. Good, I said. Next, the house, he continued, tapping the deed. It's in your name and Eleanor's. As her surviving spouse, the title is solely yours. You can sell it whenever you wish. I want to sell it, I said. As soon as possible. And your will? He asked gently. My current will leaves everything to Mark, I said. The house, the savings, the investments, everything. And now. I thought of the boat. I thought of the quiet water. I want to set up a trust. I want the proceeds from the sale of the house and my other assets to go into it. And I want to change the beneficiary to whom? David asked. This was the part one hadn't fully worked out. I had no other children. My relatives were scattered and distant. For a moment, I felt a pang of loneliness, so sharp it almost took my breath away. Who did I have? Then an idea came to me, as clear as the decision in the garage. There's a young man who lives down the street. Lau. His father passed away a few years ago. He helps me with the yard sometimes, the heavy lifting. He never asks for anything. He just shows up. He likes the boat, Leo. He was a good kid. Quiet, respectful. He'd come by a few weeks ago, seen the skiff in the garage. He hadn't called it an embarrassment. He'd whistled, low and appreciative. Wow, Mr. Jensen, you're building it yourself? That's incredible. He'd asked about the type of wood, about the joinery. He'd seen the work. He'd seen me. I want him to be the beneficiary, I said. Leo Petrov. David wrote the name down. He didn't question it. He didn't raise an eyebrow. We can certainly do that, he said. We'll set up a living trust with you as the trustee. You'll have full control of the assets for the rest of your life. Upon your passing, Leo would be the successor trustee and beneficiary. It's clean. It bypasses probate and Mark. I asked. He would be entitled to nothing. If that is your wish, David said, his gaze steady. It is your property, Art. Your decision, I nodded. It was that simple. My decision. There will be questions, David warned. When you file these things, when you list the house, your son will likely find out. He may contest it. He may claim you're not of sound mind. Let him, I said. The words felt like iron in my mouth. I am of sounder mind today than I have been in 10 years. We spent another hour going over the details. David was thorough, patient. He explained every step. When I left his office, the sun was low in the sky. I felt lighter than I had in years. I had a plan. I had an ally. The next few days were a blur of quiet, focused activity. I started the first coat of varnish on the boat's exterior. The amber liquid went on smooth, transforming the pale cedar into a rich, deep gold. The smell was sharp, chemical, but satisfying. It was the smell of protection, of sealing something off. I called a realtor David had recommended, a woman named Susan. She came the next day. She walked through the house, her expression neutral. It was the house where I had raised my son, where Eleanor and I had grown old together. Every corner held a memory. The scuff mark on the baseboard in the hall where Mark had crashed his tricycle. The faint water stain on the ceiling of the dining room from the time the bathtub overflowed during one of Eleanor's long, luxurious soaks. Susan saw none of that. She saw square footage and market value. It's a good house, she said. Solid bones. A little dated, but the location is desirable. We can list it as is, or you could do some updates to maximize the price as is, I said immediately. I want it sold quickly. Understood, she said, making a note. I'll draw up the paperwork. The for sale sign went up in the front yard 2 days later. It was a stark, jarring presence on the lawn. I stood at the window and watched the man hammer it into the ground. It felt final. The first call from Mark came that evening. I was in the garage cleaning my brushes when my phone buzzed on the workbench. His name flashed on the screen. I looked at it for a long moment. Then I pressed the button to decline the call. A minute later, A text message appeared. A for sale sign? In our yard? What is going on? Call me our yard. It hadn't been his yard for 25 years. I didn't reply. I deleted the message. I finished cleaning my brushes, rinsing them in mineral spirits until they were perfectly clean, then wrapping them in paper towels. The phone buzzed again. A voicemail. I let it sit. Later that night, curiosity got the better of me. I played the message. His voice was tight with frustration. Dad, what the hell is this? You can't just sell the house. That's our family home. We had plans for that house. Carol and I were talking about maybe renting it out. Call me back. Now, he had plans for my house. For my life. It was all so clear. I was not a person to him. I was a collection of assets to be managed. A problem to be solved. A life to be simplified. I deleted the voicemail. I blocked his number. I felt a surprising calm. It wasn't about punishing him. It was about protecting my peace. My silence was not a weapon. It was a shield. The next day, Carol called. I recognized her number and let it go to voicemail. Her message was different, soaked in performative concern. Arthur, it's Carol. We're so worried about you. Mark said you're not answering his calls. Selling the house, this isn't like you. Are you all right? Are you forgetting things? Please, just let us know you're okay. We're scared forgetting things. The classic, gentle accusation. The first seed of doubt planted for anyone who might listen. They weren't worried about me. They were worried about their inheritance. They were worried about losing control. I deleted her message, too, and I blocked her number. The silence that followed was beautiful. It was a clean, empty space that I could fill with my own thoughts, with the sound of my tools, with the classic rock station I played on the old radio in the garage. Leo came by that Saturday. I was fitting the brass oarlocks, polishing them to a high shine before installation. He stood in the doorway, just as Mark had, but his posture was different. Open, curious. Morning, Mr. Jensen, he said. Saw the sign. You moving? That's the plan, Leo, I said, not looking up from my work. Wow, where to? I paused. I looked at him. He was a good kid, early 20s, with a kind face and hands that were no strangers to work. He was studying to be a mechanic. Don't know yet, I said. Just away. He nodded, as if that made perfect sense. He looked at the boat. The varnish gleamed under the garage lights. She's looking beautiful, he said. Almost done. Almost, I said. Just the fittings. And the motor. You need a hand with the motor? Those things can be heavy. I might take you up on that, I said. I felt a warmth spread through my chest. A simple offer of help, with no strings attached. It was a language I hadn't heard in a long time. Anytime, he said. Just let me know. He lingered for a moment. Hey, you know, my grandpa had a boat like this. A little smaller. We used to take it out on Lake Monroe. He taught me how to fish from it. Is that so? I said, turning the warm brass in my hand. Yeah, he passed a few years back. I miss those days. He looked at my boat again, a wistful look in his eye. He would have loved this. The way you did the joints, it's real craftsmanship. You don't see that much anymore. He saw it. He understood. On an impulse, I said, once she's in the water, maybe you and I can take her out. For a trial run, his face lit up. Really? I'd love that, Mr. Jensen. I'd be honored. He left, and I went back to my work. But something had shifted. I wasn't just building a boat for myself anymore. I was building it for him, too. For the memory of his grandfather. For every kid who ever learned to fish from a wooden boat. The house sold faster than I expected. A young couple with a baby on the way fell in love with it. They didn't see the dated kitchen or the old-fashioned bathrooms. They saw the big backyard, the sturdy construction. They saw a place to build their own memories. I signed the papers in David Miller's office. The check from the sale was for an amount that made my hand tremble slightly as I endorsed it over to the trust. It was a lifetime of work, of mortgage payments and property taxes, converted into a single number on a piece of paper. David handled everything. He set up the trust, filed the paperwork. He was my firewall. The calls had stopped, but the next phase of their campaign began. An email from Mark, which slipped past my block. The subject line was family meeting. The email was long and carefully worded. It was full of phrases like deeply concerned and erratic behavior and potential cognitive decline. He wrote about his fiduciary responsibility, a term he must have looked up. He suggested a meeting with me, him, Carol, and a geriatric specialist they had consulted. He was building his case. I read the email twice. I felt a flash of hot anger, the first I had allowed myself to feel. He was trying to have me declared incompetent, to strip me of my autonomy, my dignity, myself, all because I had decided to sell my own house and build my own boat. I didn't reply. I printed the email. I put it in a folder with David Miller's name on it. Then I deleted it from my computer. Permanently. I had 30 days to vacate the house. The new owners were generous. I started packing. But I wasn't packing everything. I was sorting. I went through 40 years of accumulated life. Eleanor's clothes I had kept, folded in cedar chests. I packed them carefully and donated them to a women's shelter. Her jewelry I set aside for Leo to give to his future wife, if he chose. My old army uniform, my medals from Vietnam, they went into a small locked box. The furniture, the dishes, the books. I held a massive garage sale. I put up signs around the neighborhood. People came in droves. They picked through the remnants of my life, haggling over lamps and end tables. It was strange, watching strangers carry away pieces of my history. But it was also liberating. I was shedding a skin. Mark's old room was the hardest. It was still filled with his high school trophies, his yearbooks, his baseball glove. For years, I had kept it as a shrine, a testament to the boy he had been. I took a large cardboard box and swept everything off the shelves into it. The trophies clattered, cheap plastic and fake marble. I didn't wrap them. I didn't handle them with care. I taped the box shut and wrote Mark on the side in thick black marker. I did the same with the family photos. I went through the albums, carefully removing the ones of just me and Eleanor or me with my parents. The rest, the endless school pictures and posed family portraits where everyone was smiling a false, bright smile, went into another box. I finished the boat. The final coat of varnish dried to a hard, glassy finish. Leo came over and helped me mount the small, 20-horsepower outboard motor I'd bought. It was used but well-maintained. I had taken it apart and cleaned it myself, so I knew its every quirk. "She's ready for the water," Leo said, wiping grease from his hands. He looked at the boat, then at me. "You did it, Mr. Jensen. We did it," I corrected him. The last week in the house was quiet. The rooms echoed. Most of the furniture was gone. All that was left was my bed, a chair, and the boxes for Mark. And in the garage, the boat. My beautiful, finished boat. I had bought a trailer for it. I found a small, furnished apartment to rent month to month in a town 2 hours away, near a large lake. I had a new driver's license with my new address. I had a new bank account. I was becoming a ghost. The day before the movers were scheduled to take my few remaining possessions, a car pulled into the driveway. Not Mark's sleek SUV. It was Carol's minivan. I was in the garage, organizing my toolbox. I heard the car door slam. I didn't look up. She appeared in the doorway, her face a mask of worried disapproval. "Arthur, thank God. We've been trying to reach you for weeks. I've been busy," I said, fitting a wrench into its designated slot. She walked in, her heels clicking on the concrete floor. She looked around at the empty space, the boxes, the boat. Her eyes narrowed. "What is all this? What have you done?" "I'm moving," I said calmly. "Moving? Without telling us?" "Arthur, this is insane." Mark is beside himself with worry. "We thought something had happened to you. Something did," I said. I closed the lid of my toolbox. The click was loud in the silence. I woke up. She didn't understand. Her face just registered confusion. "Mark is on his way over here. We need to talk. All of us. You can't just run away." "I'm not running away," I said. "I'm sailing." I patted the hull of the boat. Her eyes fell on the boat as if seeing it for the first time. The contempt was immediate. "This ridiculous thing? This is what this is all about." Mark was right. "It's an obsession. It's not healthy. It's very healthy," I said. "It's the healthiest thing I've done in years. Just then, Mark's SUV pulled up behind her minivan, blocking the driveway. He got out, his face dark with anger. He strode into the garage. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" he demanded, his voice echoing in the empty space. He didn't even say hello. I looked at my son, the successful man in the expensive shirt, the man who saw me as a burden, an embarrassment. "I'm leaving," I said. "Leaving? You can't leave. This is your home." "Not anymore," I said. "I sold it. The new owners take possession tomorrow." His face went pale. "You what? You can't do that. I'm your power of attorney." "Not anymore, you're not," I said. I enjoyed the flicker of shock in his eyes. "I revoked it. Weeks ago." He was speechless for a moment. He looked at Carol, then back at me. "Why? Why would you do any of this?" And there it was. The question. The one he should have asked himself years ago. I didn't shout. I didn't raise my voice. I just looked him in the eye. "Because of you, Mark, me? What did I do?" The genuine bewilderment in his voice was the most damning thing of all. He truly had no idea. "You call my boat an embarrassment," I said quietly. He stared at me. "That's it? That's what this is about?" I said your boat was an embarrassment, and so you sell the house and try to disappear? Are you crazy? That's childish. "No," I said. "That was just the last word in a very long sentence. A sentence you've been writing for years." I walked past him, out of the garage and into the house. I went to the hall where the boxes labeled Mark were stacked. "These are for you," I said, my voice even. "Your trophies, your photos, all the things you left behind." He followed me, his face a storm of conflicting emotions. Anger, confusion, and for the first time, a sliver of fear. He was losing control. "Dad, this is ridiculous," he said, his voice pleading now. "Just stop. We can fix this." Whatever I said, "I'm sorry." "Okay, I am sorry. Now let's call the realtor and undo this." It was too late. The apology was a tool like a wrench used to fix a leaky pipe. It had no heart. "It's already done," I said. I walked back toward the garage. "I have one more thing to do." "Then I'm leaving." He stood in my way. "I'm not letting you leave." "You're not well?" I looked at my son, this man who was a stranger to me. "You have no say in the matter anymore, Mark. You want to simplify my life." "This is me simplifying." I stepped around him. Carol was still standing in the garage, looking helpless. I went to the workbench. On it was a small can of marine paint and a fine-tipped brush. I had been saving this for last. I opened the can. I dipped the brush. On the stern of the boat, in the center of the transom, I began to paint. My hand was perfectly steady. I painted the letters carefully in a simple, clean script. Alibi. Mark watched me, his mouth agape. Alibi? What the hell does that mean? I finished the last letter. I cleaned the brush. I put the lid back on the can of paint. I turned to face him. "It's my reason," I said. "My excuse. It's proof that I was somewhere else when my old life died." I picked up my toolbox. I walked towards the door that led into the house. "The movers will be here in the morning. They will take what's mine. You can have the rest. Goodbye, Mark." "Goodbye, Carol." I didn't wait for a reply. I walked into the house and closed the door to the garage. I didn't slam it. I closed it gently. I heard the click of the latch. And then, for the first time, I locked it. I spent my last night in that house on a mattress on the floor of the living room. I didn't sleep much. I listened to the sounds of the house, the groans and creaks I knew so well. I was saying goodbye. In the morning, the movers came. They were efficient, professional. They loaded my bed, my chair, my toolboxes, and my few boxes of personal belongings onto their truck. Then came a main event. We rolled the boat and trailer out of the garage and hitched it to my old pickup truck. It sat in the driveway, gleaming in the morning sun. It was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. I did one last walkthrough of the empty house. The rooms felt vast and strange. I could see the ghosts of our lives everywhere. Eleanor laughing in the kitchen. A small Mark watching cartoons on a Saturday morning. Me at the dining room table, helping him with his homework. I felt a pang of sadness, but it was a clean sadness. It was grief for something that was already long gone. I left the keys on the kitchen counter, as the realtor had instructed. I locked the front door behind me for the last time. I got in my truck. I didn't look back. I drove away from the house, from a neighborhood, from the life that no longer fit me. The drive to the lake was 2 hours. I listened to the radio, a classic country station. Songs about heartbreak and freedom. It seemed fitting. My new apartment was small, but clean. It had a view of the water from the living room window. The movers unloaded my things quickly. I gave them a generous tip. That afternoon, I drove to the public boat launch, the moment I had been working toward for 2 years. I backed the trailer down the ramp, my heart thumping in my chest. I was clumsy, inexperienced, but I managed. The boat slid off the trailer and into the water with a gentle splash. It floated. It floated perfectly. It sat on the water, proud and balanced. The alibi. My alibi. I tied it to the dock and just stood there for a while, looking at it. A man walking his dog stopped beside me. "That's a beautiful boat," he said. "Did you build it?" "I did," I said, a smile spreading across my face. A real smile. "You should be proud," he said and walked on. I was proud. The next day I called Leo. "The boat's in the water," I said. "No way. Already. She's waiting for you," I said. "Bring your fishing gear." He drove out that weekend. He arrived with 2 fishing rods and a small cooler. He looked different, away from the old neighborhood. More relaxed. He stood on the dock, looking at the Alibi. "She's even better in the water, Mr. Jensen. Call me Art," he said. We spent the day on the lake. I manned the tiller of the small motor, and it purred like a kitten. The boat cut through the water cleanly, leaving a small, perfect wake behind us. The sun was warm on my face. The air smelled of lake water and pine trees from shore. We didn't talk much. We fished. We listened to the lap of the water against the hull. It was a comfortable silence, the kind of silence that doesn't need to be filled. Leo caught a decent-sized bass. I caught a small perch that I threw back. It didn't matter. It wasn't about catching fish. As the sun began to set, casting long golden light across the water, Leo broke the silence. "My mom told me what your son did," he said quietly, not looking at me, or what he tried to do. With the competency hearing, I hadn't known Mark had actually tried to file something. "David must have shut it down. He showed up at our house," Leo continued, "after you left. He was asking questions. About you. About my dad. He was trying to say you were being manipulated. That I was taking advantage of you." I throttled the motor down to a low burble. The boat drifted. "I'm sorry you got dragged into that, Leo," I said. He finally looked at me. There was a fierce loyalty in his young eyes. "Don't be." My mom set him straight. She told him you were the kindest man she knew. And she told him that if anyone was being manipulated, it was you, by him. For years, I didn't know what to say. "And I told him," Leo added, his voice low, "that you were a better father to me in a few months than he'd been to you in years. And that he should be ashamed of himself." A lump formed in my throat. I swallowed hard. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did," he said simply. He needed to hear it. We sat in silence as the last of the sun disappeared behind the trees. For the first time, I told him the whole story. About the word embarrassment, about the lists, about the quiet decision in the garage. He listened, just as David had. He listened with his whole attention. When I was done, he just nodded. "He didn't see you, Art," he said. "He just saw what he thought you were supposed to be. That was it." That was the heart of it all. Life settled into a new rhythm, a quiet rhythm. I woke up early. I made my coffee and sat by the window, watching the lake wake up. Some days I took the boat out. I explored the coves and inlets. I learned the names of the birds. I learned the patterns of the wind. Other days, I worked on projects. I built a set of bookshelves for my small apartment. I repaired an old radio I bought at a flea market. My hands were never idle, but it was work for myself. Work with no audience, no judge. I joined a local VFW post. It was smaller than my old one, but the men were the same. We played cards. We told the same old stories. We understood each other without needing to explain everything. One afternoon, a letter arrived. It had been forwarded from David's office. The handwriting on the envelope was Mark's. I held it for a long time. I thought about throwing it away, unopened. Part of me wanted to, but that felt like his move. That felt like hiding. I opened it. It was a long letter, pages long. He wrote about his childhood. He wrote about how he had always seen me as invincible, as the man who could fix anything. He wrote that when Mom died, he got scared. He saw me getting older, and he didn't know how to fix that. So he tried to manage it. He tried to control it. He admitted he'd been wrong. Deeply, fundamentally wrong. I see now, he wrote, that in trying to protect you from the world, I built a cage. I didn't see the man. I only saw the problem. I miss my dad, the man who taught me how to ride a bike and bait a hook, the man who built my crib. I don't know if he can ever forgive me, but I wanted you to know that I finally understand. The boat was never the embarrassment. I read the letter 3 times. The words were different this time. They weren't a tool to get what he wanted. They felt humbled. They felt like the beginning of an actual apology. I folded the letter and put it in a drawer. I didn't reply. Not yet. Forgiveness wasn't a switch you could flip. It was a landscape you had to travel through. And I was still enjoying the view from where I was. The door was closed, but I had not thrown away the key. Maybe, one day, I would be ready to see who was on the other side. But for now, the lake was calm. The sun was warm. And I had a boat to sail. I took the letter with me on the boat that afternoon. I motored out to the middle of the lake and cut the engine. The silence was profound. I read it one more time. The words of a man I barely knew anymore, my son. He had been so sure of himself, so confident in his modern, streamlined view of the world. A world of efficiency and managed outcomes. My world, the world of sawdust and patience, of slow work and things that last, was an antique to him, an inconvenience. I looked at my hands. They were 72-year-old hands, veined and spotted with age. But they were strong. They had planed the wood for this boat. They had wired its lights. They had steered it out onto this open water. These hands were not an embarrassment. They were my biography. I thought about his plans. Renting out my house. Putting me in a community, it was all so neat. So tidy. He would have managed my slow decline with the same detached competence he managed his investment portfolio. He would have visited on holidays, bringing a potted plant and a sense of fulfilled duty. We would have spoken, but we would not have talked. And I would have slowly faded, a ghost in my own life. A quiet old man sitting in a designated chair, waiting for meals, waiting for visits, waiting for the end. My tools would have rusted in a storage unit. My memories would have been packed away in boxes he never opened. But he used that word. That one perfect, terrible word. Embarrassment. It was a gift in its own way. A harsh, unwelcome gift. It was the splash of cold water I needed. It broke the spell of passive acceptance I had been under for so long. I took his letter and tore it into small pieces. Not with anger, with a sense of finality. The words had been said. They had been heard. Now they could be released. I let the pieces scatter on the water. They floated for a moment, small white flags of surrender, before slowly sinking into the dark water. That chapter was over. What came next was up to me. Leo got a job at a marina on the other side of the lake. He was a natural. He had good hands and a quick mind. I'd go over there sometimes, bring him a coffee. I'd watch him work, his brow furrowed in concentration as he diagnosed a faulty engine. He had a gift. One day I was there, and he was struggling with a stripped bolt on an old inboard motor. He was frustrated. I looked at it. "You tried a penetrating oil?" I asked. "For an hour," he sighed. "Heat." Scared of the fuel line, I nodded. I went to my truck and came back with a small, heavy tool. A handheld impact driver. The kind you strike with a hammer. It was my father's. "Try this," I said. "Put the bit on, turn it just a little in the direction you want to go, and give it a good, sharp whack." He looked at the old tool, then at me. He did as I said. He positioned it, took a breath, and struck it hard with a small sledgehammer. There was a sharp crack. The bolt broke free. Leo stared at it in disbelief. Then he looked at me, a huge grin spreading across his face. "How did you?" Old tricks, I said. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways. He held the tool in his hand, weighing it. They don't make them like this anymore, no, I said. They don't. I told him about the trust. I sat him down one evening in my small apartment and explained everything. I showed him the documents David had prepared. I told him he was the beneficiary of everything I had. He was quiet for a long time. He looked uncomfortable. Art, I can't accept that, he said finally. It's not right. It's your family's money. No, Leo, I said, my voice firm. It's my money. I earned it. And family is not just about blood. It's about respect. It's about showing up. You showed up? I told him it wasn't for him to worry about now. It was for the future. What I want you to do, I said, is live your life. Build your career. Find a good woman. Have kids. And if one day this money helps you buy your own garage or send your kid to college, then that will be the best investment I ever made. I could see tears in his eyes. He just nodded, unable to speak. We never spoke of it again. But something shifted between us. It wasn't about money. It was about legacy. I wasn't just a lonely old man he was kind to anymore. I was family, the kind you choose. Months turned into a year. Then two. My life was simple, but it was full. I had my friends at the VFW. I had Leo. I had my boat. I learned to sail. I bought a small, used sailboat, a day sailor. The Alibi was for calm days and fishing. The sailboat was for a different kind of freedom, for the conversation between the wind, the sail, and the water. It was a language of constant adjustment of feeling and response. It required my full attention. It left no room for old ghosts. I thought of Mark less and less. He became a figure from past life, a story I told myself about a man I used to be. One day, I got a call from David Miller. Art, he said, I have some news. It's about your son. My heart clenched. An old, involuntary reflex. Is he okay? He's fine. He and his wife are getting a divorce. I sat down. I wasn't sure how to feel. I felt a strange, hollow echo of sadness. Not for their marriage, which I had always suspected was more of a partnership than a romance, but for the upheaval, for the pain it would cause. David, I said, why are you telling me this? Because he's contesting your will again, or the trust. His lawyer is claiming that Carol was the source of the undue influence that drove you apart, that she was the one poisoning the well. He's trying to frame himself as a victim, too. He's trying to get back in. I was silent. I looked out my window at the lake. A sailboat was heeled over, cutting a clean white line across the blue water. It's a long shot, David continued. It won't go anywhere. The documents are ironclad. Your testimony, if it came to that, would be unshakable. But I thought you should know. He's asking to meet with you. Through the lawyers, I thought about it. The old me would have felt a pull of obligation, a sense of paternal duty. The new me felt nothing, just a quiet weariness. No, I said, no meeting. Tell his lawyer that my life is no longer his business. Tell him my decisions are my own. Tell him I wish him well. And that's all. Understood, Art, David said. There was a note of respect in his voice. I hung up the phone. I did not feel anger. I did not feel triumph. I felt a profound sense of peace. The last thread had been cut. He was no longer my problem to solve. His life was his own, to navigate as he saw fit. I had my own waters to sail. That evening, I went for a walk by the shore. The air was cool. The sky was filled with the soft colors of twilight. I thought about the word embarrassment one last time. It had been a key. It had unlocked a door I didn't even know was there. A door to this life. This quiet, simple, dignified life. My son had tried to put me in a box labeled old, irrelevant, finished, but he had underestimated me. He had forgotten what my hands could do. I had not built a box. I had built a boat, and I had sailed away. Not from him, not from my past. I had sailed toward myself. I am writing this down in a simple notebook. It's not a journal. It's just a place to put the thoughts. A logbook for a journey that didn't cross an ocean, but an even greater distance. The distance between who I was and who I am. My name is Arthur Jensen. I am 74 years old. I am a father. I am a veteran. I am a widower. I am a boat builder. These are facts, but they're not the whole story. The whole story is in the grain of the wood. It's in the quiet hum of a well-tuned motor. It's in the weight of an old tool in my hand. It's in the comfortable silence shared with a friend on a calm lake at dusk. My life is not an embarrassment. It is a thing of my own making, and it is beautiful,